Hello, I'm Robin. Welcome to Bookspin. The Fife of Bodidharma was first published in Fantastic Magazine, June 1959, and this is another one of Cordwainer Smith's fable-like tales. Unlike most of his fiction, though, this one is not set in the far future. It's actually a historical tale spanning huge periods of time throughout humanity's history. Despite this big scale, however, the story itself is only 7 pages long, so it's a quick read, but it is entertaining. So, this story focuses on a mysterious magical object, a fife that was created by a goldsmith in ancient India, in the Indus Valley civilization. And while the details of this instrument are a little hazy, we do learn that it was created with an unusual alloy and shape, and the goldsmith had inadvertently made something extraordinary. This fife has special psionic powers. Depending on the listener's psyche and how it's played, the music can induce profound serenity or drive the listener completely mad. Anyway, time passes, the goldsmith dies, the fife gets buried. Over the ages, numerous tomb raiders and robbers find the fife, test it out, go mad and die because of their poor moral character. Until one day in the year 554, someone finds the fife and presents it as a gift to Bodhidharma, the legendary Buddhist monk who transmitted his teachings from India to China. And so Bodhidharma carries this fife with him throughout his life, almost like a very powerful charm. Now I'm just going to read a bit from the text now, because I think this illustrates quite nicely just what the fife is all about. At the end of the fife was a little whistle. 4 touch holes gave the fife pitches and a wide variety of combinations of notes. Blown once, the fife called to holiness. This occurred if all stops were closed. Blown twice, with all stops opened, the fife carried its own power. This power was strange indeed. It magnified every chance emotion of each living thing within range of its sound. Bodhidharma, the Blessed One, had carried the fife because it comforted him. Closed, its notes reminded him of the sacred message of the 3 treasures of the Buddha, which he carried from India to China. Opened, its notes brought bliss to the innocent and their own punishment to the wicked. Innocence and wickedness were not determined by the fife, but by the hearers themselves, whoever they might be. The trees, which heard these notes in their own tree-like way, struck even more mightily into the earth and up to the sky, reaching for nourishment with new but dim and tree-like hope. Tigers became more tigerish, frogs more froggy, men more good or bad, as their characters might dispose them. And then Smith goes on to describe, in various poetic ways, the effects that the fife has on different animals that he encounters. Now I'm assuming that the 3 treasures that he's referring to in this passage are the 3 jewels of Buddhism, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Anyway, Bodhidharma spreads the gospel of Buddhism to China. He lives out his life, and when he dies, the fife is buried with him, and this time it stays buried for many centuries at least. In the 19th century, eventually it ends up in the hands of a European archaeologist who, perhaps wisely, doesn't try to play it, and it finds its way into a German museum. Cut to the year 1945, towards the end of the Second World War, a young Nazi soldier discovers the fife while looting the remains of a museum. Now, what happens next is quite interesting. I won't spoil it for you because it's basically the climax of the story, but this soldier has a few psychological issues. I mean, he is a Nazi. He is pretty brainwashed. So of course, this Fife is going to have an effect on him because it amplifies a person's character, right? But it may not be exactly what you expect. Finally, the story concludes with another scene a few years later in Huntsville, Alabama, where the Fife takes on its most bizarre role yet in its history. So that's it, basically. It's an interesting little story. I'd say this story is probably the closest to fantasy among all of Smith's writing that I've come across, because the Fife is essentially a magical object. Although you could say technically it's sci-fi because it is framed a little bit in scientific language, or at least pseudo-scientific terms. The phrase that is used in the story is mechano-psionic linkage, whatever that's supposed to mean. But the aesthetic of the story is definitely fantastical, and I would say it's even fairy tale-like. Anyway, it's worth the read. It's not as bizarre or as mind-bending as a lot of Smith's stories, but nevertheless, it's a quirky and entertaining short read.